Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Golden Globe nomination predictions. Now, if you're watching this before the Golden Globe nominations are announced, then you're probably watching it very late at night. And so I don't know if these are going to impact your predictions at all. I really did try to have these out earlier, but this was just one of those days where it was more hectic than I thought it was going to be. At any rate, I don't want to waste any more time at the start of the video. I'm probably going to talk about these categories in detail. So let's just get right into it with best. Oh God, what's the name of this category? Achievement in box office, I think is what it is. Such a stupid category. I keep wanting to call it best popular film. It's not, but that's what it is. And so now I've seen a few people predict movies like Challengers, Furiosa, The Fall Guy, and none of those are actually eligible for this category. The rule is the film has to have earned 100 million domestically. And so I looked up all the films that have achieved that, and there's about 20 of them this year. Now, I will say, when I looked at the highest grossing movies of last year and sort of compare that to the nominees last year, they didn't just check off the 8 highest grossing films of the year. They did actually take some consideration into, are these films well received? They should try to nominate movies that are actually good, or at least movies that were perceived as being a big success. So I don't think Despicable Me 4 is going to show up here, even though that made a lot of money. I actually feel pretty confident about the top 7 in this category. It's that 8th spot that does give me a little bit of concern, because I think they could very easily go for Moana 2, because that just came out and it made a lot at the box office, and it's kind of a big story at the moment. And yet, my gut tells me that the movie does not have good reviews, and those are... I mean, I feel like it could get into animated feature easier than it could get into box office achievement. But I hope I'm wrong. This is such a stupid category. Okay, moving on to a category that's only partially less stupid. Best International Feature. Now, obviously, so this category does not have the same rules as the Oscars, meaning that any non-English language film is welcome to compete. Something like Didi is interesting, though, because I keep hearing that, like, oh, it's mostly in English, but maybe there's just enough that's not in English. It's one of those things where it's debatable, but I think I'm just going to hedge my bets and predict it to be nominated. All We Imagine as Light. So I'm actually going to use this video as a bit of an opportunity to talk about, do a temperature check on everything that's changed since we started getting into the heat of awards season, and we've had the first couple of critics awards and industry awards. All We Imagine as Light seems to be the early frontrunner in those critics awards, and it's not going to be eligible for the Oscar because India did not submit it. And if All We Imagine as Light continues to lead in critics wins, this will be the 3rd year in a row where that's happened, after RRR and Anatomy of a Fall. Now, with those movies, the Oscars were able to find a way to reward the films outside of the International Feature Film category, so I wonder if they might find a way to recognize All We Imagine as Light somewhere. I don't know. This category is also weird because Emilia Perez is the assumed frontrunner because we assume it's getting into Best Picture, but also it's clearly becoming a very controversial movie, and I wonder if a lot of people might be compelled to vote for something else. It's actually shocking how a lot of the industry awards I'm seeing are not even nominating Emilia Perez for International Feature. Like, this is a film that keeps missing at a lot of big places, and we'll talk about that later when we get into picture. But for now, just looking at the top 6 for International Feature at the Globes, I do feel like this 6 makes sense. Animated feature, so there is a pretty clearly defined top 5 for the Oscar. However, I'm not so sure that all 5 of those are going to get into the Globes. I feel like Wallace and Gromit, I don't know if the HFPA loves Aardman as much as the Academy does. So I'm gonna say Wallace and Gromit misses. Moana 2, even though it might not be a good movie, the HFPA nominated Wish last year, and so it would only make sense that they would get Moana 2 on there as well. And Transformers 1 also seems like a more populist choice. Although, to be fair, they have branched out and nominated some more obscure animated films in the past couple of years, like My Sunny Maud and some stuff like that. So maybe something could come from behind that no one sees coming, like Look Back or The Imaginary. We'll really have to wait and see. I have Mufasa the Lion King at number 9 because technically speaking, the last one was nominated for this category, but I feel like they're probably not going to do the same thing because I don't know how many voters have even gotten the chance to see it. Okay, Best Original Song. This category is so weak. It's just so weak this year. And this is basically the 5 that I have for the Oscar lineup plus the Will and Harper song. And beyond that, I don't really think so. I don't think that Beyond is getting nominated for Moana. Beautiful That Way, I could see being a Lone Globe nomination because it's Miley Cyrus. Same with Piece by Piece because that's also a well-established singer. So I do want to say, just in terms of this category for the Oscar, with Amelia Perez losing popularity, there is a small part of me that wonders if voters are like, do we really have to give Amelia Perez another Oscar? Because the awkward thing is, for as much as this movie is controversial, it is technically speaking the frontrunner to win in 3 categories, international feature, song, and supporting actress. And I feel like it really cannot win all 3. But if they decide they don't want to give it the win in song, Diane Warren's right there. And based on reviews for the 6 888s, apparently it's decent, and that might be enough. If this is a solid hit at Netflix, if people are actually seeing the movie, then they might be like, you know what? I don't like Amelia Perez that much. Let's just give Diane her Oscar. We'll have to wait and see if the Globes do that first, because the Globes will have to be the ones that set that into motion. For Best Original Score, these are the 6 that I have predicted, and spoiler alert, these are my Oscar 6 plus Dune Part 2. We now know for a fact that Dune Part 2 is not going to be eligible at the Oscars, but I do think that other award shows are going to nominate the score as a move of solidarity. The win is interesting, though, because Brutalist seems to be seen as the frontrunner for now. But I did notice that when they announced the Hollywood Music and Media Awards, The Brutalist was shockingly missing a nomination, which was bizarre because that particular industry finds room to nominate everything. So I don't know if there was some weird thing that happened where they couldn't nominate The Brutalist, but if The Brutalist is not a top contender, there is a small part of me that wonders if Wild Robot could just take the whole thing. And obviously, it's very, very difficult to win score if you're not in picture. But the last one to do it was Soul, which was also animated. And the score is a very, very big part of the movie. So I'm going to cross my fingers. I know it's no longer happening in picture, but maybe this could be an interesting consolation. Although, I forgot to bring it up for animated feature earlier, but Wild Robot is not the critics' picks for animated feature. A lot of these industry awards are giving their award to Flow. So we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. Okay, Best Screenplay is next. Okay, I apologize if I'm kind of talking more about the Oscars in general and less the Golden Globes, but my brain is kind of frazzled, and there is a lot that I haven't said since the last Oscar update video. So I feel pretty solid about this 6, but I do think Challengers or Nickel Boys could show up as a serious threat. The Substance is the one that I'm concerned about because I really want that movie to do well. And the screenplay, you can actually find the screenplay online, and the way that it's formatted is really, really interesting. But the fact that it doesn't have a lot of dialogue might hurt it. And one screenplay that I'm very, very interested to follow all throughout awards season is Wicked, because usually you would write out the Broadway adaptation in screenplay, because those tend to not be nominated unless the film is like legitimately winning picture. But with Wicked, I still can't get over how they managed to take the first act of the stage musical and flesh it out into its own movie and make it feel so natural. So there is actually a lot of work going into that screenplay, and if the movie is really, really loved, don't be shocked if that movie gets a screenplay nomination at the Globes, at least. So, with that being said, next up we have, we're moving into the acting categories now. So supporting actor, I'm not really sure what to do with. There's not a ton of contenders, but there are a few solid ones. I think Culkin, Pierce, and Macklin are all in. Denzel Washington is probably in, even though the movie's kind of losing popularity. And then the last two slots, I have Yuri Borisov and Edward Norton. And I think the Oscars, it's going to come down to one of those two for that last slot. Borisov is a part of the movie that is considered the Best Picture frontrunner and is actually a pretty big part of that movie, and I just feel like they're going to want to bring him along. And Norton, a well-loved actor for many years, having a significant supporting part in a movie that is coming out at the right time, and I think a lot of voters are really going to gravitate towards. Maybe Tucci could contend, and with this being the Golden Globes, I wonder if Jonathan Bailey might show up like he did at the Astros, just to be like, yeah, we're going to nominate Wicked everywhere. But as of right now, I feel pretty confident in this top six. Now, supporting actress is interesting. I have Grande, I have Saldana, I have Deadweiler, I have Felicity Jones. Those four seem pretty set in their ways. Set in stone. And I think for the last two slots, I have Ingenue Ellis and Saoirse Ronan, although I'm not confident. Okay, Ellis, I think, is in. I think it's admittedly a small part, and we don't know how well the movie is doing overall, but I feel like it's going to get into picture, and it's maybe in director. It sort of makes sense that it would go along with that. Ronan is the one where I'm like, should I leave her in? Should I take her out? I'm just going to say this. Blitz is falling hard. I think when I look at the industry awards, very few critics groups are even mentioning this film in any category. And my dad actually started watching the movie, and then he turned it off about halfway through because he said it just wasn't grabbing him. And my dad loves Bridge of Spies and The Imitation Game. So the fact that Blitz failed the dad movie test is a big, big warning for that film. It's definitely not in contention for picture anymore. And but I'm going to cross my fingers and say Saoirse gets in because she's been doing a lot of campaigning. Quali could get in. Isabella Rossellini could get in. There's even a world where Gomez gets in. Or maybe we're looking at something totally shocking here. I just don't know. And I do want to say, based on what I said earlier about I don't think Emilia Perez is winning all of these awards. I don't think it's winning 3 in a row. I do think it would make sense for Grande to take this. And I know that's part of a conversation in its own right. I think there's a limit to how much Emilia Perez can win, and this is the easiest place to have somebody else win. Although Grande, the biggest knock against her, outside of her not being a professional actress that some might scoff at, her being a pop star, I think the performance does speak for itself. The big issue is the fact that we know there's part 2 coming next year. And if you know the stage show, you know that part 2 is going to feature a lot of dramatic acting from her. And so maybe some voters might feel compelled to wait. I really don't know. We'll talk about that more as we get further into the season. But in terms of nominations, these are the 6 I have. Best Actor in a Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical. Now, I've talked before about how Best Actor in general is really, really... it's a shallow pool, and nowhere is that more obvious when you look at the comedy musical contenders. I mean, there's no one. There's really no one, and I think everyone has Eisenberg and Powell and Stan and reluctantly Gabriel LaBelle, because we don't really know what else. And then in the last 2 slots, I sort of went off the beaten path. I went I went for Ryan Gosling in The Fall Guy and Jason Schwartzman in Between the Temples. And I'm not seeing a whole lot of people predict these two, but for some reason, it sort of made sense to me. I think Gosling is that more populist pick of we really like them and they were in a movie this year. We had limited options, so let's go with them. And Schwartzman, this movie has been slowly popping up recently, with it getting nominated for Screenplay at the Gothams and Carol Kane winning a Supporting Actress prize and getting into Indie Spirits. And I feel like there's more eyes on that movie than we expect, and why not take a swing and predict Jason Schwartzman to get in? Because a lot of these other names, I don't really know if I see Hugh Grant or Michael Keaton or Jesse Plemons. Anything could happen. It's such a weak category, but I'm going to go out on a limb. You only live once. Best Actor in a Drama, meanwhile, is slightly more substantial, but not really that much. We have Brody, we have Chalamet, we have Domingo, we have Fiennes. Those four are safe bets for the Oscar and safe bets for here. And then slot number 5, I think, should be Daniel Craig. And slot number 6, I threw in Bob Marley, threw in Kingsley Ben-Adir. And I saw that movie, and I think it might actually be my least favorite film I've seen this year. But Ben-Adir is really going all out. He is doing his own singing, and he is transforming himself, and the studio is really, really pushing it. I think they're going to start the narrative here. Now, the only other person that I could see show up is Sebastian Stan, but I don't know how much that movie is going to be a thing. I think we all immediately dropped it from our predictions post-election, but I do wonder if there might be a few people that are like willing to go back and take another look at that film and be like, okay, but how did we get to this point anyway? So I don't know, maybe The Apprentice could have a resurgence, but I'm not going to bet on it. Best Actress in a Comedy Musical. Okay, so this is funny now because most of the Best Actor contenders are in drama, but most of the Best Actress contenders are in comedy musical. And, well, actually, I say most of the ones that are seriously contending for the nomination, in my eyes, anyway. And I think the top 4 feel pretty secure. Mikey Madison, Cynthia Erivo, Carla Sofia Gascon, and Demi Moore. Maybe not exactly in that order, but all 4 of those should be safe to get in. And then we have 3 actresses vowing for 2 slots. We have Zendaya, Amy Adams, and June Squibb. And all of them make sense. Amy Adams is going big, is giving what people are calling her best performance in years in a movie that's very divisive. But I think the Golden Globes like Amy Adams, and I think it makes sense to see her show up. Even though June Squibb also makes sense, and it would be very obvious if she did show up. I do get the sense that that movie was so long ago, and Night Bitch is coming out right now, and it's tight. It's tight, and I did consider the possibility of having both of them in and having Zendaya be the one that miss. But spoiler alert, I am predicting challengers to get into picture, and I just don't think I can do that and still have Zendaya miss. This one's really, really tight. And if there is a shocker that comes out of absolute nowhere, I would maybe keep an eye on Olivia Colman in Wicked Little Letters, because I can just see that being the big WTF nomination. What? Olivia Colman? I guess they really like her. Now, if we look at Best Actress in a Drama, this one's tight. This one's tough. Angelina Jolie has not gotten as many critics mentions as I would have predicted. So I don't know if she's gonna be the one who wins this in the end, but right now I think she's safe for the nomination. Nicole Kidman and Marianne Jean-Baptiste should be safe, and then it's just, I don't know. Saoirse Ronan kind of makes sense. The thing with Ronan is I don't no longer feel comfortable with having her in the top 5 for actress, because that movie just came and went with 0 fanfare. But I feel like with limited slots, there's a good chance she makes it into the Golden Globes. And Kate Winslet, as I talked about, well, you're probably going to see the Best Actress Hunger Games video after this one, but Frances Fisher is behind that movie, and so I think there's just enough support it does make sense that the Globes would go out of the way to nominate Kate Winslet. And then I have Fernanda Torres in the last slot because they've shown they like to be more international. There's a few other people that could make it in, mainly Tilda Swinton and Pamela Anderson, who both have an interesting narrative behind them. But I don't know. It's just the way it makes sense in my head, these are the 6 to predict, and I could be wrong. Best Director is maybe the trickiest category out of all of these. I feel pretty confident about Corbet and Baker, and then beyond that, I don't know. Looking at the Globes and looking at what they tend to have on, I expect to see Villeneuve, and I expect to see John M. Chu. I think those are like the big populist. The director's branch of the Globes is different from the director's branch of the Academy. It's okay to have populist blockbusters show up here. But they also like to nominate women. So I think Coralie Farget is safe in foreign films. Farget is technically a foreign director. So I think the substance is going to be big. I think Farget makes sense. And then the last slot, I went with Ramel Ross because I still want to have faith in that movie. But it could be Jacques Godard or it could be Edward Berger. Edward Berger, I was worried so long, was too safe of an option. But maybe I'm still thinking about the director's branch, and it would make sense for him to get into Globe. But I don't know. There's also Godard, which it's hard to tell how the industry is feeling about Amelia Perez right now. It's sort of leaning towards the movie is kind of falling out of popularity. So as of right now, I'm going to have Ramel Ross get into that 6th slot, but I don't feel confident about it at all. Best Picture, Comedy, or Musical. So I have Anora, I have Wicked, I have A Real Pain, I have Amelia Perez. The top 3 I think are all solidly in. Amelia Perez, I feel like there is a world where Amelia Perez is the shocking miss of the morning. And people are like, oh my God, how did this happen? Because I keep seeing that movie is just not as popular as Netflix thought it would be. But they're really campaigning it, and they don't have another option to fall back on if this isn't a success. So I think it should still get in, but it's not impossible, man. And then The Substance, this is the big test for The Substance. So far, it's done pretty okay in Critics Guilds. It's shown up everywhere it needs to, but this is really what's going to prove. Okay, is that just a critics thing, or is this an actual thing that's going to factor into the Oscars? And I think it is. I really think that The Substance is going to go far, and is going to get that Best Picture nomination at the end of the day. But if it misses the Golden Globe, then I may have to retract that statement, especially given the competition here. And Challengers, I think, makes sense. Challengers might be the real critics' pick of the year because it's getting in a lot of places too. And I think Challengers is like the May December. It's the film Twitter movie that everyone really, really loves and is going to wish it does better than it ultimately ends up doing at the Oscar nominations. But we'll see. Maybe now that we know Queer isn't going to hit, then maybe Challengers could be a real contender. And I do just want to say Saturday Night could maybe contend. Different Man could... Well, I think Different Man... Everything beyond Saturday Night is probably not getting in. I've officially given up on Wild Robot at this point because we've had nominations for Astra and NBR and AFI, and usually those 3 groups are really, really kind to animated films, and if Wild Robot was going to have a presence in this season, it was going to show up at one of those places. It missed all of them. And I recognize that, yeah, I'm at peace with it. I just want to see it do well in original score and song. And maybe next year we can start the campaign of getting an animated film and picture again. If the Spider-Verse movie comes out next year, then that will be my thing to campaign. But I've already trying to let go of it. And then we have Best Picture Drama. And this, I think, is actually pretty safe. At least feels safe for now. Brutalist, Conclave, Sing Sing, Dune Part 2 feel solidly in. Nickel Boys, I'm a little nervous, but I'm going to hedge my bets and have it in. And then A Complete Unknown makes a lot of sense for the Globes. It's the flashy new thing, the last thing that most voters will see, the musician biopic, and a lot of people have it around 10 or 11 for picture. They're like, it's maybe in, it's maybe out. And I think it would make a lot of sense, because if you look at the 6 films that are up for Best Picture Drama and the 6 films that are up for Best Picture Comedy Musical, those are basically, that's your field. I think that's your field for what's going to get those 10 nominations for Best Picture at the Oscars. And it could, but here's the interesting thing. If beyond the top 6, if there is a surprise, then it's going to be a more international film. And we did see last year the Globes surprised us all by being very, very international. So they could continue that trend, but I don't know what they're going to go for. As I said before, All We Imagine Is Light seems to be the critics' pick for the big international film of the year, but Seeds of the Sacred Fig has such a great narrative behind it, and maybe they'll want to go for that instead. Meanwhile, I'm Still Here is from Brazil, and there is a big chunk of the voting body that is Brazilian, so my gut says that they're all going to cancel each other out, and none of them are going to get into this top 6 for picture, but there is definitely a world in which one of them does. And that's all I have to say. 26 minutes of recording, and I think, I'm going to try to get this edited and uploaded as fast as I can, although, you know what? My throat is sore. I'm done talking. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you next time.